Everyone, and welcome to Council's sixth and final town hall on reimagining public safety. As a part of Council's Reimagining Safety initiative, Council held 5 town halls over the past 3 weeks to hear from national experts and residents. This, in addition to focus groups and a community survey, will help inform Council as we head towards passing an operating budget later this month. Tonight, we'll be talking about improving the hiring process for Columbus police officers to improve diversity among the force, as well as the importance of preparation and ongoing training for all of our officers. Currently, the hiring process for Columbus police officers can take as much as 18 to 24 months from the point of application to the start of the police academy. Often, this results in many candidates, especially minority candidates, taking positions elsewhere, leading to a disproportionate number of diverse candidates who complete the application process. It's also important to note that in some cases, applicants are related to officers currently serving CPD, which are predominantly white males, who are able to provide the support, coaching, and direction during that 18 to 24-month application process, creating an advantage for these applicants. This is commonly referred to as a legacy candidate. There is also little ongoing training for our police force. This can lead to a lack of diversity in their perspectives of individuals and situations, leaving some officers ill-prepared for the best plan of action when engaging the general public. This has to change. Training, especially on an ongoing training basis, is an important tool for improving workforce productivity. It's also an essential tool used for coaching and redirection. In this circumstance, it's a great resource for holding officers accountable for their actions. Tonight, we are very fortunate to have great speakers joining us this evening who happen to be experts in these areas. Detective Felton Collier is of the Office of Recruitment for the City of Cleveland, Ohio Department of, I got to say that properly, the City of Cleveland, Ohio Department of Public Safety. Joining Detective Collier this evening is Charmin Leone, the previous officer in charge of recruitment with the City of Cleveland, now with the Center for Policing Equity. We also have Chief Mike Butler from the City of Longmont, Colorado Police Department. Chief Butler will be joined by a previous town hall guest this evening, Assistant Chief Tom Thompson out of Miamisburg Police Department and current Executive Director of Kettering Health Network Police Department. As far as how the show will flow this evening, we will have a short presentation from our guests. After that, council members will ask questions and discuss. Then we're pleased to have Gail Saunders back at the Saunders Company to lead us, the audience, through an engagement activity to help get audience feedback. And finally, we'll have public testimony. With that, I'm going to turn the floor over to our guest, Detective Felton Collier, and let him tell us a little bit more about what Cleveland did to reduce that time of, I think, about similar to Columbus's, down to a 6-month period. So without further ado, Detective Collier, the floor is yours.
How you doing, Councilman? Thanks for having me, along with Charmin Leone, former OIC, for recruitment. So when they call, they ask, how long is our recruitment process? Basically, from the time of we do applications to the time we start academy. And like Columbus, ours was in that range of 12 months to 24 months. I know it took 24 months from the time I applied to the time I actually started in the academy. And so when the city decided to form their recruitment team, their public safety recruitment team, about 4 years ago, we got together and we started trying to look at ways to streamline our onboarding process. We contacted multiple departments around the country and just found out what different types of things they were doing and how fast it was getting them to get a class into the academy and then onto the streets. Because that's the main goal, to actually get the police officers onto the street. And so there's a different couple things that the city of Cleveland did to help with this process. I'd say probably the first thing they did is they put together what we have as we call our hiring committee. And right now, currently, our hiring committee meets every other Monday, and that includes people from all different parts of the hiring process for onboarding, not just police, we also include fire and EMS as well, because we recruit as public safety as a whole. And what we do is in those meetings, there are, we have the recruiters there, we have our background investigators, we have the chiefs of all the divisions or representatives from those different divisions, along with our HR, civil service, and other people who are critical to this hiring process. And so in those meetings, we discuss different ways to improve and streamline the hiring process. And I'll just give you a couple of different things that we've done in this time frame. We moved to the National Testing Network, which is the company we use to do our civil service exam. It's an easier process for the candidates to do. Instead of what we used to do was we had one testing date. Everybody had to show up at this testing date, take the test on this date, and then that's how we, process their applications and their tests. And so by doing this, this allows us to get multiple applicants, not only just from the area, but from nationwide. And that helps bring in different demographics of candidates, as well as we get all the ones right here in the Cleveland area. Something else we did is we went to using open online for portions of our background. They can, streamline and get the information quicker for different parts of our background service that we use. So they can do things such as prior employments, do driver's license checks and things like that. Instead of having our background detectives focus on that information, we use a third-party vendor who can get that information, get it quicker, and take some of the stuff off of our background detectives' plates. Our application process, we took that process and we combined it with our testing process, so they overlap each other. So with NTN, we will open up our applications for 1 month, and we'll overlap our testing about 2 months after the applications open, and then we'll extend the testing 2 weeks past the end of the application deadline. And so that way we're accepting applications and testing at the same time. And then once our application period ends, there's another 2-week period of where we're still testing, but then that process ends at that, and then we're complete with application. So essentially we're completing application and testing right behind each other. There's not a period of where we're doing applications and then waiting later to have a test day and then waiting later to get all that information. They're running right behind each other and finishing up a lot quicker. We also assigned a full-time background investigation team. Prior to that, we were detailing officers down from particular units to help with background investigations and things like that. Now we actually have a full-time background investigation unit, and they help process, and that makes it a lot quicker because it's the same people pretty much who are doing it. You're not having to retrain people, trying to get people used to what type of information they need to find and what things they need to get done. They're doing all this stuff. They're constantly doing it, so they become more proficient at these checks when it's time to process a class, and that helps move the process along a little faster as well. Our personal history statements, we also made those. There used to be the applicants would fill out a hard copy, a paper copy, and have to, bring it in. We now send it to them at a PDF file. They fill it out online. That information is requested to send back to us prior to us even meeting the applicant, so that we can start getting that information into our system, and the background detectives can start getting their leads necessary together so that they know what they need to look up. Then they have to bring in a hard copy, a notarized copy, once they come in and they meet to go over their PHS. But the detectives already have their PHSs in hand. They've already started putting them into the system, and they've started already getting the leads together. They're going to have to follow up on these particular candidates. We also put together our fingerprinting, our photos, and all that things. There used to be different days that they used to come in and do their fingerprinting, take their photos and stuff like that. We ended up putting all that stuff together in the same day. So now they come in, they get their fingerprints taken, they get the photos taken, any other pertinent information that's needed in that particular day. We try to get everything done instead of having them keep coming down on different days to do different parts. Trying to, again, finding ways to streamline the process, make everything go a lot faster. As far as that, our medical and psychological part, that was another part that took a extremely long time getting medicals done and getting psychologicals done. What we did with that, it would normally take 8 weeks for us to get through that process. We've got it down to 6 weeks, but we're looking at actually getting that down to about 4 weeks now. The company that we use to do our medicals, we just reached out to them again and asked them if they could speed that process up, where they were using a couple different facilities to do our medicals. They've now agreed to open up a larger number of their facilities in order to help us facilitate getting these candidates through the process a lot quicker. And right now they're telling us they'll probably be able to get these applicants to get through the process for our medicals in anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. So now we're going from cutting our medicals down from 8 weeks to 6 weeks to possibly 3 weeks here in the future, which will cut down a lot of time that we spend waiting on all that information to get back to us. And I think for the most part, that's a lot of what we've done. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything. I'll ask Sharman to jump in. But I think that's the bulk of some of the things that we did to streamline the process and get the process moving faster. And like I said, now we are able to, when we get done to start an application period, for the most part, we can get an academy going in 6, maybe 7 months if there's something that happens in between. But for the most part, no longer than 7 months, we get an academy started. We're processing the academy right now. We just had an application period that just closed. Application in November and testing in December, that just closed, and we're gonna have this academy in by the beginning of May.
Ms. Leon, do you have any additional comments?
He knocked it out of the park. That was it. I think the other question you guys presented was about the diversity and how it helps or does it help. What really helped was having a full-time recruitment team as well. So we kind of follow them around like, pesky big brothers and sisters through the process, and having the National Testing Network and being able to look at the statistics, who's in what part of the process also helps us to stay in constant contact with the applicants, especially being able to contact them through, we went to National Testing Network, but we also went to our online application system. NeoGov, thank you. So they have a interaction, so we can actually email the applicants through NeoGov. And it was one other thing. Oh, so the Open Online is a state term for those who are Ohio-based. It is a state term contract, so that helps. And having everyone at this table, what we found when we first started, of course, people are very protective of their areas, working across the board. But now it's big old family, what can you do? What do you need? How can we change this? And if there's legislation that's needed, if there's a policy that needs changing, having everyone at the same table with the same goal, the transparency changes the game, because what may have taken a month or two just through regular channels to ask about a certain process, you're taking care of it right then, right at the table, and everyone is discussing it. So it was just awesome.
Very exciting to hear all this. I do want to recognize my colleague, Councilmember Dorrance, who's here this evening. And I see Council President Harden has been in and out. So I know we have plenty of people listening. A lot of my colleagues are listening and unable to be here in person. But I would like to ask, how long did this process take? From the time that you were looking at 18 months like we are to getting it down and whittling it down to that 6-month period. How long did it take to get that process through and see some marked results?
It took about 12 months, would you say, Detective?
Yes, I would say, yeah.
Yes. Before we really start, because of course, it starts out as a vision. You start thinking about it. Okay, first it was changing the test, and that was for a number of reasons, not just streamlining the process, but a process to, realize the best candidates that we could. So you start there. You have to have a platform to process that in. So going over to NeoGov, And so that it took really 18 months to about 2 years. And then it really started getting streamlined because, of course, it started with the hiring committee with police because it's the biggest budgets, the most hiring. And then we folded in fire, and then we folded in EMS. So.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. So you guys are working collaboratively across divisions to make sure that everybody's needs are met. And are you working side by side out there in the field, that sort of thing?
Correct. So like for recruitment purposes, we all recruit in our recruitment office. There's actually police officers, firefighters, as well as paramedics and EMTs. And we all work together. We all learn the hiring processes for all three divisions so that when we are out and we're recruiting, we can actually, if I'm talking to somebody and they don't necessarily want to be a police officer, maybe I can get them to be a firefighter, or maybe I can get them to be an EMT or a paramedic. And so we cross-train and learn the necessary steps to get through each one of those processes.
That's excellent. Is that ran under the Department of Safety within? Would be what it would be called in your world?
Yes, it's all up underneath public safety, under our public safety department.
What type of applicant pool do you have in general on an ongoing basis, as far as like numbers go, and like how big is your applicant pool, for instance?
For police?
Or however you divide it up, police, fire, okay. Like in general.
So in general, our last application that we just did for police, for example, we had a total of 900, I think it was like 920 something applications that we got, and that was in a 30-day period.
And then how many end up testing out of that 900 and some?
Out of that, we tested about, what was it? I want to say it was around 700 something that actually went and actually sat and took the test, somewhere in the sevens. And that national testing service, are they allowed then to, is that almost on demand? Like they can just sign up to take it at any time, or is it still, are there only certain types of tests are given? Right. So what happens is once they sign up, our civil service then sends them an email letting them know how to go about and schedule the test. They then go to the National Testing Network's website, and what they do is they put in their zip code. It will then tell them what the nearest testing facility is near them based on where they live at, and it will then give them options of days, dates and times of where they can schedule a test. So it makes it more flexible for the applicant. They can pick the day, they can pick the time and the location of where they actually test at, instead of, like I said before, we had, it was one day, one time, you had to be there or you missed it. This allows them to fit it into their life schedule, so they're not worried about trying to miss work or find babysitters and all those different things that happen in life. This gives them the flexibility to set it on their own schedule. Great. Council President Hardin, do you have anything you'd like to ask or say tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank our presenters. That last point a second ago about pulling together the recruiting of police and fire and EMT, on its face just makes so much sense. It's just an interesting practice, and maybe why Cleveland is having some of the success that we just heard about. So thank you for your presentations to our friends up north, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorrance.
Thank you, Chair Remy. Detective or Miss Leon, just want to ask sort of the motivations when the city started going down this path. I know one of the reasons we wanted to talk about it tonight was sort of increasing that diversity pool itself, and it sounds like it's been very successful in doing so. I think a lot of the discussions we're having here in Columbus is looking at best practices around the city, sort of what the intention was to start and how that's been measured and how it's been accomplished. So just want to ask, was specifically for the city of Cleveland, was to say, hey, we want to do this differently to make sure our applicant pool is diverse, one, and then two, as high quality as we can get, and sort of how that's translated to where we are today. Just either one of you feels best to answer that.
Did you want me to go?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. So what was the impetus? Consent decree. Right? So Department of Justice came in. You guys know the story. And so part of one of the deliverables was the recruitment of officers, of course, right? You can't get the right behavior from the wrong people. An agency can't outperform the quality of its people. Close and effective supervision. Where does it start? That kind of thing. So absolutely it was, but it's been a blessing for us, of course. And we know that it will continue to be for the citizens of Cleveland. And of course, we know that the reason or the need to diversify is not just because people need to see themselves, sure, right? And we talk about being able to relate and all that, but just because that's the case doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. So it's not just for, you don't want to increase women and minorities simply to increase women and minorities. You want the skill set that comes with it. And so ensuring that you have the right screening process so that you are finding and articulating those skill sets that are best utilized in providing public safety for urban environments, whatever that looks like. And a lot of times the things that we think look like public safety don't really contribute to public safety. And so it was a lot of work because National Testing Network still comes in and they do an assessment. And now we're looking at behavioral-based interviewing. We just not looking at, we trained, we've started with fire, police will be next, because that is the most advanced form of onboarding and screening of applicants in the process. So a lot of cities, as Detective Collier said, a lot of cities do the personal history statement, and then you do a review of the personal history statement. That does not equate to an interview. And we have gone across the country, he can tell you, since we've been doing this. Now we've gone to conferences in San Francisco, San Diego, Atlanta, Miami, Chicago. And so, that's another thing that's happening in this space, is that people are not just working in their own little silos anymore and sharing this information. And one of the things we know is that people can do good on paper. And just because someone has a clean background, and this will sound familiar to those who recruit and hire police, they've got nothing in their background. I know a good candidate, they have nothing in their background. Nothing in your background does not equate to good candidate. It's not, it's not the same. So, implementing those new evolutions in onboarding and screening applicants is just, and once you start, you just keep refining and keep refining and keep refining. So.
Thank you. And
I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you not only being direct about sort of the reason for it, but also sort of the successes and how, it's not just, well, we got to do this now. It's actually been embraced and actually, provided some of those results. Just a question. In addition, I apologize if you don't have these numbers in front of you, because I know Detective Collier, I think, is in a car right now, so it may be a little bit difficult to get to this. But have you all seen? So obviously the diversity of the pool has increased. I'm curious about, again, when we talk about that quality, I think, Ms. Leon, you mentioned that is as important here. Have we seen differences in sort of educational background as this has been implemented, and additional age? Because one of the things that I think probably members of don't know, as maybe sitting there tonight, is that you have to be a certain age in order to become a sworn officer in the state of Ohio, and that's different than other professions in which there is that gap between high school graduation and when folks are able to enter into an academy, and that certainly affects. When you talk about that no baggage of those are some pretty critical years for a lot of folks, and just curious about that educational piece and sort of age component, about whether or not you've seen increase or quality on those sides as these reforms have been implemented.
So I would say we most definitely have seen that. I mean, a lot of it starts with the recruitment on the college campuses and having the presence on the campuses, but we've seen an increase in applicants with degrees who have applied for the department, even though it's not necessary. We've been getting a lot of bachelor's degrees. We've actually even got a couple master's degrees here in the last couple of years of people applying. So we have seen an increase in that. We've seen an increase in diversity overall. Actually, our last few application pools have been over 50% minorities. So we've seen an increase across, the pool in every aspect. And again, like I said, I think that's a lot of just the recruitment team as a whole being out there, going and meeting with these different people, talking to different people in different spaces and meeting people where they are. Because, just because you put an application out there doesn't mean people are going to show up and take the test. You have to actually go and find the quality of candidates that you actually want to apply. And then that's how you start getting them to apply, when you go and you talk to them and you actually tell them the truth about policing. You tell them exactly what it is that they're going to be coming across, what they can expect when they get here. Because if you don't tell them what it is, then you're probably going to lose them at some point. Even if you get them hired, they're probably not going to stay long. So those are some of the things that we've done to see the increases across the board that we have seen.
And one question about, meeting folks where they're at. And again, I think this speaks both to the education piece and the diversity. When you're talking about recruiting a different kind of candidate than just, the legacy ones that just walk in the door, curious, what are those questions that get asked about to a recruiter of, what is this job? So when you go to a diverse pool, or you go to a pool that has a different educational background, what are those questions that are being asked by those folks that maybe, a legacy candidate isn't walking into the door and asking? Because either they already know, or, they're not viewing it from that kind of perspective.
So as a recruiter going out here, like you said, trying to meet people where they are, we've done all type of things to go and find the applicants that we want to see apply, especially within the city of Cleveland, trying to get city of Cleveland residents to apply for the job. So, we've done things such as going to the barbershops, or going to open gyms, or the guys are out there just playing basketball. And and like I said, when you start talking to them and trying to get them and convince them that that this is a career that they may want to try, and like I said, you want to tell them the truth about policing. Some of the questions that that I get asked on a regular basis is, what is it like to be a Black male in the police department, especially in today's age? And so, when you're facing things like that, you have to be able to tell people the truth and tell them what it is they can expect coming into this space. And they can tell if you're being honest with them. And one of the things that we always talk about is being honest with people. And that way, so I don't want to trick you just to get you to come in and sign up and do the job. Then you get here, you come back and find me and tell me this is not what you told me. So we're straight up, we're honest with people. We tell them exactly what they can expect when they get through here and what it's going to be like for them. And it's just, it's questions like that, that people have, or they ask me, what about, if I have family or I have friends who are against me being a police officer, stuff like that. So those are some of the questions that we come across when we're actually out there, and we're really digging into the community and trying to find people who we would believe actually be great officers. They just never thought of it or saw themselves as doing this career.
Thank you.
Thank you both for sharing with us tonight. I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you, Chair Remy.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Dorrance, and of course we are blessed to have Sergeant Christopher Smith Hughes as leading our recruiting, and we think the world of him, and we want to make sure though that we take down some of these barriers, like this lengthy hiring period, and make sure that we can get people in a more reasonable amount of time. 18 to 24 months is just unacceptable in today's world. So we'll be working on this hard. So thank you both. Stick around. I'm excited to have Chief Mike Butler from the Longmont, Colorado Police Department next to talk to us about what training means. What does that do for the culture? What cultural competency and diversity training, those types of things, to demonstrate how it leads to accountability and it builds a better police force. So without further ado, I know you got Assistant Chief Thompson on as well, but looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Sure, thank you. And I want to congratulate the City of Columbus for having such a comprehensive process in terms of resetting, rethinking, and recalibrating policing, reimagining policing in Columbus. That's fantastic, to the level that you're going through it. I do want to comment a little bit on the hiring piece of this. how critical that is. And I think your two presenters did outstanding in terms of not just talking about the quantification aspect, but also talking about the quality aspect of who we hire into our police profession. It's becoming more and more important. And I'm just going to presume that Columbus has a pretty good comprehensive profile of the things they're looking for in a police officer. And I just want to add one thing to that I think is becoming more and more critical everywhere in this country, and that is we need to hire police officers who really thrive in relationships, want to develop relationships, want to be part of relationships. Hiring lone cowboys or lone cowgirls just doesn't get it anymore. And so those folks who thrive in relationships typically do very well in policing, given the nature of where policing is going. And also they have a resilience about them because the critical incidents police officers face are wear and tear on their souls and psyches. And folks who are kind of surrounded and want to be in relationships with a lot of people, good healthy relationships, I have found are much more resilient to the critical incidents that they confront in terms of what that looks like. So I'll just stop there with hiring, training. Can't say enough about it. And I will say this, that the policing profession has been dubiously lacking in terms of what training needs to look like. And oftentimes, training is one of those things where police departments often just want to do the minimum. And we get someone qualified and we get so many hours to get them certified. And because of minimum staffing or staffing issues, we can't conduct the training, or we just can't do training because of so many other forces that are trying to draw and pull at us. But it's one of those things that we can't do enough of. And the reason why, for those who are police officers, you really know what I'm talking about. For those who know police officers, have been around the business for a while, I don't know of another profession that requires more from their practitioners than police officers. They respond to just about every single social issue that's out there, or they respond to the residuals of those social issues. Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, communities are now starting to take another look at what they want their police officers responding to. But at this point in time, I imagine Columbus police officers are responding to domestic abuse, child molestation, people who are struggling with addiction, people are struggling with their mental health, people are homeless. Those are very complex social issues that oftentimes police officers are just thrown into with minimal amounts of training and are expected to try to resolve those issues. And so I will say this, you just can't train enough. And if there's a part of the budget that needs to be reconciled in terms of ensuring the quality of your police officers, ensuring the quality of service, it's training. I will also tell you that new recruits often look at the quality and quantity of training that police departments have, especially younger recruits, 20s, 30s. They want to know that they're going to be appropriately and adequately trained in order to be able to do one of the most complex jobs in this country. So I could go into a lot of nuts and bolts, and I will a little bit. But I got a little list here I want to go. So there's skill-based training. There's the typical things we have to do for self-defense, for driving, for firearms, for report writing, constitutional law. Those are some of the basics, but there's so many other things that we have to learn. And you mentioned, is it Councilman Remy or?
Council member, yeah, but
Councilmember Remy, thank you. I can't say enough about how training does impact culture. And we have developed what we call a culture of accountability within Longmont, in which we expect people to make the right choice for the right reasons. And we also expect peers to be very influential in terms of ensuring that their peers are accountable. And so the most primary force for accountability in any department is the individual themselves. And for those of us in policing, we know that we do a lot of the work on our own. And so maybe 80, 90% of the time, a police officer out on the street will be on their own. Often they go to calls with other people. Sometimes the supervisor stops by, but the vast majority of the time they're on their own. So that culture of accountability starts with that person. And that's another aspect of the profile you need to consider in terms of the capacity for people to choose accountability. So that's something else that needs to happen with that profile as well in terms of hiring. The peer accountability, especially important, critically important. Those influencers, personal and peer accountability, will go a long ways in developing a culture of accountability within your organization. And not only does hiring have a lot to do with that, training has a lot to do with that, supervision has a lot to do with that, performance management systems has a lot to do with that, leadership style has a lot to do with that, the architecture of your organization has a lot to do with that. And so all these systems have to be, these management systems, hiring, recruiting, training, supervision, all these, I think you all know, I hope I'm not saying anything new, there has to be congruency in those systems to support mission and vision. If there isn't, there's a lack of integrity in terms of how a police department operates internally. And so depending on what Columbus wants to do, the training modules, the kind of curriculum is immense, and it has to be ongoing. And I'm going to put a number out there to say that I don't think we should have any less than 250 hours of training per officer. Training is broken down into a few different segments. Number one, there's academy training. To what extent that academy training works with your police department, Columbus probably has their own training. You can't train enough in that. And so our officers go through about 5 to 6 months of initial training. And frankly, they could go through a lot more. Then there's what we call the FTO program. Most FTO programs are typically 12 to 14 weeks in length. There's critical task checklists that the FTO looks at in terms of assessing a new recruit. And I will say that those critical tasks need to be reevaluated in a big way in terms of what's important for a police officer to learn. Because that initial contact with the FTOs that they're encountering is incredibly important. Now, what that also speaks to is the quality of your FTO. We basically will only choose FTOs who, when a new recruit gets in their car, they know that that FTO is community minded. They love the city that they're working for. They see their role as service oriented. They're more in alignment with that kind of perspective, attitude, and profile than a police officer who is very enforcement oriented. And so when you start that process, we train our officers to be ambassadors, to be guardians, to be relationship builders, to be leveragers of resources within a community, and to use enforcement judiciously. And so those things cover a lot of bases. They're not, some people like to use the phrase law enforcement. I don't use that phrase because it implies that that's exclusively what police do. But police are greater. They're much more broader than that. They are right now. But becoming an ambassador, becoming a relationship builder, becoming a guardian, becoming a person who leverages resources, who can pull things together for a certain set of circumstances or a problem that they're confronting in a neighborhood. And then to use enforcement judiciously takes a certain kind of training to be able to pull that off. And most of the training in a basic recruit academy, most of it that I've seen around the country, is pretty enforcement oriented. And they throw in these addendums of verbal judo skills. or other kinds of communication skills. I can't emphasize enough the communication skill aspect of training. I can't even get close to it in terms of emphasizing it enough. Whether it's interpersonal skills, whether it's communicating with anybody, notwithstanding race, ethnicity, gender, whether they're struggling with a particular health issue, that capacity to communicate with people in those lines, you can't do enough training. We teach our officers how to speak publicly. There's no question that officers find themselves in front of people quite a bit, and they got to get over the idea that they're on a little bit of a stage when they're police officers, and they're going to be. And oftentimes, police officers are assessed by the community, given the quality of their capacity to communicate in a lot of different ways. In there you can throw crisis incident communication, de-escalation communication, so many different, and that has to be not only in the academy, emphasized in the FTO program significantly, it has to be ongoing all the time. And that falls into that a minimum of 250 hours a year. Now, I know when you look at 250 hours, that's 6+ weeks of training per officer. Guess what, folks? It's not, we can hardly do any less than that and expect our officers to be able to do at the complexity or perform in their complex environments. Those trainings also speak to culture. I mentioned the culture of accountability, culture of empathy, culture of teamwork, and culture of service. All of those aspects of a culture that you want to see in your police department can be very much emphasized through the training that they get. The other thing I want to mention around training, it's more than a curriculum, are the people who are either assigned to the training division or the people who actually instruct the training. Police have been known in the past, not saying Columbus is there, because I don't know anything about Columbus. By the way, I'm an Ohio boy. I was born and raised in Massillon. I had a great year with the Cleveland Browns and almost a perfect year with the Ohio State Buckeyes. But on the other hand, who gets assigned to training oftentimes in the past have been officers and people who weren't doing well in operations. Well, let's just send them off to training so they don't screw up anymore in operations. Those folks that you send to training to either coordinate the whole training system or help with instruction have to be your best, without question. There's no question in my mind those who are instructed have to be their best. You need the best people to be FTOs. You need the best to be your training instructors. There's a tremendous amount of time spent with those folks. They have role models, mentors, and Columbus has probably a slew of those folks. And those are the folks that we need, and because there's a lot of leverage that goes into that training in terms of how a police officer sees their career, sees their job, sees the department they're working for, sees the community, sees their role in terms of how that plays out. That mentoring and modeling become critical, especially initially, whether it's in the academy, whether it's in the FTO program, or whether it's within the in-service that police officers have to do. Those are the kinds of training. Training can also be a place where clarity of mission, clarity of vision become critical again. That is constantly talked about, and there's no give and there's no hedging on what mission and vision are for the Columbus Police Department. This is also a great opportunity for police officers to ask questions and to really put themselves in an environment, because oftentimes police officers will kind of, well, I don't know if I want to ask a question because I might look like I'm not smart, or I might not look like I'm a high quality police officer. You have to somehow break that down and allow that kind of easy flow of, hey, we're all human. We're all trying to figure it out. No one has the greatest answer in the world. Together we can figure this out. that kind of cooperative approach in teaching and instruction plays a big part. And I won't talk a lot about adult instruction right now, but there's a difference between adult instruction, teaching adults, teaching police officers, instructing police officers, than teaching in high school or teaching college kids. I'll say something else about recruitment and hiring, and it's something that I don't know to what level you guys confront these issues. I got that it takes too long of a time to hire people. We have ours down to 4 or 5 months, but we very seldom want to hire folks who are under the age of 30 anymore. And because it's not that 30 is a magic age, it's just that we want people to be police officers who have experienced disappointment, experienced failure, experienced rejection. They're no longer the center of their universe. They have this sense about them that they're one of many people in the department, they're one of many people in the community, and that they can make a difference. And they have this service mode. Like one of the other people said, hiring people who have already been in a job before, people who have already had experienced employment in other places, whether they've been teachers, social workers, youth ministers, you name it, becomes critical in terms of the quality of person you end up with. The other thing I will say about training is you can train in so many different places. It doesn't have to be a formal setting of a classroom with an instructor. There's a lot of training that can occur in briefings. There's a lot of training that can occur when supervisors, I don't know if supervisors ride with their officers in Columbus or not. There's a lot of training that can occur in so many different settings in terms of that modeling, in terms of that capacity to impart information, or in terms of police officers being able to ask questions. And we really emphasize that quite a bit. So clarity around policies, can't say enough about that. And I'll just end there. The policies that are ongoing within Columbus, how, what's the context? Why are they the way they are? How do they play out? How do we apply them? Being done in groups to the level that they're being done becomes critical, especially, use of force policies, pursuit policies. There's certain policies that have high liability attached to them, we all know about, that I think have become critical. So I'll leave it there, and I'll let my comrade take over. Thank you, though.
Appreciate it, Chief. Assistant Chief Thompson, do you have anything you'd like to add as far as what you've done over in Kettering? And certainly want to make sure that you get a moment to speak as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have a golden opportunity here because you get to choose your next leader. And everything we're talking about today is super, super important. But if you don't make the right pick at who's going to be your chief, none of this matters. Because you'll find somebody who's competent, but can they drive the right culture? And I'll tell you what I mean. This is what I experienced. I've experienced in leadership. I read a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. I don't usually read business books, but I did. I read a lot of books.
That's a phenomenal book.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, one of the things that he said that I have found to be so true is if you want to do anything transformational, which is what you're wanting to do in Columbus, you have to have the right people on the bus and get the wrong people off the bus. You have to find a chief who might not be your cookie cutter chief with all the ribbons. He's going to need to be empathetic, service oriented, human centered, somebody who models exactly the person that you want to recruit at the street level. He's going to have big shoulders, or her, be comfortable with being uncomfortable, tough enough to make really hard decisions. I know when I transferred into Kettering, I used that good to great model. I got rid of directors and I replaced them with people who modeled the type of care and service that I wanted to see happen in our network. And he or she's also gonna need, your support and patience, because if the culture has been the problem, and if the problem is your chief has not been engaged, and maybe what he is modeling is not filtering down to the lower level, that's because he doesn't have the right leadership structure set up under him, and it's not flowing. So he's going to have to or she's going to have to make some tough changes. That's going to need your support and patience. And there'll probably be some grumbling amongst the ranks, because they're probably going to have to do things a little different. But I learned that there's two things that are for certain about police officers. One is they don't like change, and two is they don't like the way things are. So either way, you're gonna have to make some changes. So in your organization, I would really, really find it hard to believe that you don't have highly competent trainers, that everything we're talking about, you have experts that know exactly what to do. They're not mesmerized about what do we need to do in training or what do we need to do in recruiting. I assure you, there's people there that are educated, experienced, and they know. The problem is probably you just might have the wrong pieces in the wrong places. And I'm telling you, if there's any takeaway, you can have the best procedures, the best training, but if you don't have the right leader emulating and modeling the right culture and holding people accountable through the ranks underneath, none of this matters. So again, I'll go back to my first statement. You guys have just the opportunity of a lifetime to choose that special woman or special man, and so that is that would be my input for tonight. Focus on that chief, and the rest of it will follow if you get the right person.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I've spent a lot of time thinking about how critical it is to find the right person that can to change culturally, this department. And certainly, like you said, there's lots of very capable and extreme experience within the department, but certainly there needs to be work to avoid circumstances that we've seen recently, and certainly change their engagement with the community, because that's what the community wants. The community pays for every dollar of their salaries, and we should not forget that. And so if it were up to me, we would take a lot of these mental health issues off, and that's, I think we're all working towards that, off their plate. But in the alternative, we would ask them to become community ambassadors or neighborhood ambassadors. They need to engage. I can share with you that even just some of our dispatching or patrol policies are counterintuitive to ever build relationships within the community. And this happened over a decade ago, but it's more of an on-demand type system. And certainly the patrol officer never gets the opportunity to really recognize who lives in some of the areas that they serve. And, when we had our latest shooting with Andre Hill, I started asking about training and what type of situational training. Do they get in front of a simulator every once in a while? Do they work out and do tactical type training? And the answer is resoundingly no. And that's because it's not been made a priority, or we can't afford to take them off the street. But I can assure you that if you took, just like they would take them off to drug tests randomly, or, and you took them out of the field for an hour, a patrol car out of the field, you could do wonders. And again, back to your point, Chief, about, the number of hours that you need to spend. I think culturally we've got some work to do, but I look at that as a great opportunity for this police force. And my question kind of to both of you is, what, when you have a properly trained force and you are providing ongoing training, what does that tend to do with morale of the police officers?
Go ahead, Tom.
First of all, you did make a comment. I just want to give you some food for thought. You may have had officers tell you that they just didn't have the manpower to take cars out of service, or the police administration and their designees set up the training budget and the training strategy. So if they're not making time to do strategic training in the right areas, then it's not because they don't have the budget for it. It's because they're using their budget for other purposes. So I'd be careful buying. If you hear that, just remember what I said right there. But I do think one of the biggest things is when you're teaching these tactical maneuvers and tactical situations is have the opportunity to teach what you talked about. I can't remember the exact words you used, but ambassadors. Teach them the context behind what they're doing, not just strategy, shoot or no shoot, and your thinking tactics, but take those opportunities to combine diversity and inclusion training, or combine that with ambassador, letting them know the context about the importance of their job, the context of the community they're working within. And I've really found that when you combine those two, when you don't combine those two, when you just do tactics only, it's a me versus him mentality.
Right.
They're the enemy and we're here and we're going to have to shoot or no shoot, But if you combine and add context and the human element and your actual purpose to it, I've seen morale really improves morale. It really improves morale because not only does it give them tactical expertise, which everybody wants a competent officer, when to shoot and when not to shoot, but people also want to know, you also have to have context to be able to make those decisions. And I think it makes a holistically a better officer, happier officer.
So let me build on what I think Tom just articulated very well. Here's how officers' morale can really increase, especially with the training component. We do what we call a needs analysis in terms of here's where we're at with our training, here's where we need to be with our training, here's how we're going to get from where we're at to where we need to be. And that the emphasis, the centerpiece of that needs analysis are our police officers. They're the ones who are given a voice in terms of here's the kind of training we need to have. And when they see that they're being listened to, and when they see that playing out, and you can begin to look at patterns of here's what 300 officers said they needed to have in terms of training. Well, you're getting close to a pattern and a theme. And when you then provide that kind of training, they begin to see that not only are they getting the training, but their morale, their perspective, they begin to think that their voice counts, their thoughts matter, their humanness is valued. Those things begin to happen when their voices and their thoughts are loud and clear. And so highly suggest that whoever you end up hiring, that you find somebody who understands the nature of what a needs analysis is and includes everybody in that analysis. And then it will drive where you need to go. It will drive where you need to go. I can assure you that those police officers, mid-level management, upper management, they'll all have different kinds of focuses, but training gets to be, they begin to take it more seriously. And it becomes a whole organization way of doing business.
And you're one of the first people I've heard mention public speaking, and I think that's a critical component. I mean, for somebody that came from neighborhoods, dealt with our community liaison officers, the amount of public speaking that they have to do and the people that are listening it's incredible. And really to provide that type of training, I think, is paramount. Councilmember Dorrance, I want to give you an opportunity. I know we're running a little bit long, but we'll make up for it. This is good, great conversation as far as I'm concerned. So, Councilmember Dorrance, what questions might you have?
I don't know if I have any question for these two gentlemen. I think it's really important to underscore, I think what one of them said is that that previous life experience before they become an officer. And I think that's also important. And, Chief, I think you mentioned about that leadership as you move up sort of the structure as well, that diversity of experience within the leadership of the division as well. I would not have entrusted myself with being a sworn officer of any department at 22 or 23 or 24 years old, right? So when you talk about, having someone at 30 understanding that they're not the center of the universe, and having had good things and bad things happen to them, and have empathy and those kinds of things. Not that we want to go down a sort of an ageist route here, but I think talking about that diversity of perspective before they get to a place, I just think it's really important for us to underline as we talk about this recruitment of having the right people in the right spots. And I think that goes for leadership as well. Having folks at the all the way from the sergeant level all the way up to the chief, having seen and done different things to make sure it's not just groupthink and not just one way, and sort of understanding the diversity within the community, I think is really important. So it's not really a question. I think it's just really important points I think both of you have made that I just wanted to underscore that I think are important parts of this discussion as we think about who in fact we're going to hire as a street level officer, and who in fact we're going to hire to lead the division, whether that's again at the sergeant level all the way up to a chief.
Thank you, Councilmember Doran. Certainly, thank you, Chief Butler and Assistant Chief Thompson, for coming back again. Probably won't be the last time we talk, and hopefully we'll be able to engage you in some more further conversations as we continue down this path. This may be the final hearing that we're having on a reimagining basis, but it's certainly not the end of the discussion. It's really close to the beginning. So thank you. Without taking up any more time, I really would love to turn it over for this next exercise to Gail Saunders of the Saunders Company to walk through this community engagement, the audience engagement exercise, so we can hear from everyone participating at home their thoughts about tonight and provide that feedback for us. So I will turn it over to you, Gail. Thank you for being patient.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Chairperson Remy. We really appreciate the opportunity and excited about tonight's discussion. And so tonight, before we start our engagement, we're going to need you to do a couple of things. Those who are watching on Facebook, those who are watching on YouTube, and those who are with us attending, either open a new browser and go to menti.com. That's MENTI.com. And you're going to put in a code when it asks you, and that code is 4508303. And you can get that on your browser, or you can also reach it on phone as well. And again, that's www.menti.com. And then when it asks for the code, 4508303. And tonight we're talking about investing in a better division of police. And you've heard great dialogue about diversity and inclusion and how that goes into investing into a better division of police and accountability. So our questions tonight center around those topics. And so Cheryl, if you'd be willing to go to our first question. Again, you will be responding on Menti. And please, all of you out there in the social media world, having those watch parties, please join us. First question, the City of Columbus should invest in what? Your idea, what you think is most important to create a police division that is accountable and just in its decision making. And so what? Oh, we see them coming in already. You were ready for us. We have a website up there that people are recommending: quality interpretation services, bike patrols, more training, and that was certainly a big part of the discussion tonight between our speakers and our experts. We'll give you a couple of more minutes to give us your thoughts. What should the City of Columbus invest in to create a police division that is accountable and just in its decision making? A contract that ensures accountability instead of allowing FOP to circumvent accountability. Inclusion and compassion. Appropriate response to the 911 calls. Procedural justice training and the history of policing in America. That's something new. We've not heard that one. Extra hours of on-the-job training. Reviewing the civil service guidelines to allow for more diverse hiring. hiring, creating a police force that is similar in diversity to the residents of Columbus, the representation that we have in our population here. And we see the civil service guidelines again. Looking at the next police chief, and that was something that came up today as well in the conversation, that is certainly critical as we move forward with that piece. We have about 30 more seconds. I'm not seeing any new extra hours on the job training, streamlined hiring, EMT, fire, police. Also, that FOP contract comes up. National training, and I thought I saw including ABLE training in there. I thought I saw that at some point. Thank you. Thank you. So Cheryl, if we can go to the next question. And this is, what can the City of Columbus do to improve police officer engagement with residents? And so think about some of the conversation this evening in terms of speaking opportunities, in terms of officers really getting into the community and knowing their community. What do you think are some opportunities that we can do to improve police officer engagement with residents? Your thoughts. And many of you, some of you have been on many of the town halls. And so all of the conversations that we've had over the course of the last 6 weeks, think about those conversations as well. Any thoughts? Allow a community board to either agree with each police hire or be able to petition to remove officers. And of course, we know that we're in the process of seating our civilian review board that was passed by the City of Columbus and its residents. Video of Deaf PD, IT system administration. Officers that live in the communities they work and reflect the community they serve and reflect it demographically as well. Interpretation quickly available, making those interpretation services quickly available to reduce some misinformation and misunderstandings. Public speaking training, diversity training, culture class training, encourage Columbus Police to live in Columbus, and older candidates begin with the end in mind. And we see the police chief again in terms of the hiring police chief. Any others? We've got about 30 more seconds. Thank you so much for your participation. Each police precinct can host a community event with food and sports and more, at least annually. Disability training and disability person teaching. I think we're beginning to see some of the make the police force representative of the 30% Black community. Give global applicants priority if they reside in the city limits. And so thank you for this. If accountability increases, we saw that last response. Thank you for that. So our next question is, how can the City of Columbus invest in the community to improve police relations? And so some examples of that we've seen and heard through our sessions: bike patrol, block watch initiatives, investing in additional training, investing in programs such as youth initiatives. It used to be the PAL program. Investing in programs where you partner with community liaisons. Investing in various programs such as that would be some of those examples. But of course, you're in the community and you have great ideas around how to invest in the community to improve police relations. So we'd love to hear your ideas. Better non-emergency services, alternative crisis response, which has been a topic of these town halls as well. Allow disability awareness training, because it does improve empathy and compassion as we see other people and our ability to walk in another person's footsteps. Social workers and victim advocates to partner with the police department. De-escalation training for community members. Thank you for these. Support for recovery services for addiction and alcoholism. Defunding Division of Police to reallocate those dollars into schools and rec centers. Art programs for the youth. More shelter spaces. Any other ideas? Thank you. Duty officer and leadership should reflect diversity across the communities we serve. Affordable, safe housing. Some of this, as we've seen, really does speak to health disparities, the social determinants of health. And so all of those things play a role. And we see that popping up in some of your responses. Thank you. Shelter for abuse survivors beyond what we currently have. Non-escalation, as officers often escalate issues. So de-escalation training for officers as well. We have about 20 more seconds. So if you have any other ideas, we'd love to get them here. Restorative practices for the community. And you see some other things that have been in our other responses as well, very similar there. Affordable housing, integrated neighborhoods, neighborhood health centers, group violence intervention, and this whole host of really focusing on those things that are addresses multiple challenges in our community. And so restorative practices for community and the schools. And then again, we talk about that reallocating the police budget to invest in some other programming for youth and other needs. Thank you so much. And Cheryl will go to our last question for the evening. And this is your opportunity to really think broad, think big, think about things that you've seen in other cities that we don't have here. But the sky is the limit for your vision for creating more diversity within the Columbus Division of Police. So we really want your ideas here. You heard the conversation this evening from the experts, what Cleveland is doing, what others are doing, and how and what we're doing. And so we really want you to think big and bold for your vision for creating more diversity within the Columbus Division of Police. And so we'll look for your responses there. Deaf advocates to train officers. We've seen that as a central theme throughout the town halls. And the culture that was mentioned this evening and how that really starts at the top of the division and needs to be part of that overall culture change if that's a need. Hiring incentives for bilingual officers. If funding is tied to diversity, people will find a way to make it happen. Language courses for officers. Have community leaders recommend diverse candidates for positions. More gender representation in police. And we see your response. We thank you for that. Any other ideas, your big, bold vision for creating more diversity? Prioritize applicants who are residents of the city. Have community leaders recommend diverse candidates for positions. Reduce and eliminate applicants who live outside of the city, and that bilingual officers support race is there again. Outreach to youth in diverse communities. Start early. Begin to develop those relationships early. We see the understanding of looking at the next division of police chief and that process. And so we have about 10 more seconds, more gender representation in the police force as well, something that needs to be considered as we talk about diversity. And 30% Black police force. Again, thank you. And so that concludes our public engagement session for tonight. But the City Council has been very deliberate in ensuring that we have many, many ways for you to engage and to lift your voice and let your opinions be heard. And one of those is, of course, tonight through this engagement, through the speakers, and then also through listening to the town hall. But you can also take a survey. There's a survey at columbus.gov/reimagine safety. And it's a 16-question survey. It takes you a minute and a half at the most, 2 minutes. So we really want to get your feedback on that as well. And so we encourage you to take the survey and to share that survey with your members of your family, your friends, and any of your constituents. And then if you have additional questions and or comments and ideas, we want to capture those as well. And so you can send those additional comments to reimaginesafety@columbus.gov. Again, reimaginesafety@columbus.gov. And so we thank you for your time. I do want to remind you that Columbus City Council has charged us with making sure that everything that we capture through focus groups, through these engagements, that we will conclude and roll those up to a comprehensive report and present that to Columbus City Council, and that certainly will be a public document as well. So we thank you, and Chair Remy, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Gail, and of the Saunders Company. Appreciate this exercise. It's been very informative, and look forward to the final results. I think this is great stuff, and we want as much public feedback and responses as we possibly can get. At this point, we have reached the public testimony portion of the hearing. And so what I'd like to do is invite the next 7 speakers to speak this evening. I'm going to call your name, ask you to state your name, any affiliation with any organization that you may represent, and council staff will unmute your speakers. Folks will have 3 minutes to speak. And our first speaker this evening is Mr. Tom Dillard.
Councilmember Remy, I do not have Tom Dillard listed.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Rose Life.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. My name is Rose Life. I'm not affiliated with any organizations. What I would like to offer for your consideration today is in this multifaceted is only one path to heal the wounds that Columbus and the United States in general have found that are still wide open and bleeding. This path that I propose is documented by several studies going back decades. Meditation and mindfulness have been shown to lower crime rates in Washington, D.C., reduce racial bias, led to fewer deaths in the Lebanon War, reduce offending rates in young adults released from juvenile detention centers, and heightened compassion. These studies use many different kinds of meditation practice. I do not subscribe to any sort of religious meditation, and I firmly believe in the separation of church and state. What I would like to suggest is a mindfulness practice, however. The word meditation simply means to think upon or mentally plan. So collectively with the Columbus Police, any city employees, those individuals incarcerated, and any resident that would like to give 10 minutes a day to collectively come together in this unified vision to heal, I know we will see real substantial benefits. In fact, in 2017, when the murder rates were high, Mayor Ginther requested from 200 churches that they pray for the murder rates to be reduced. This was done on Sunday, January 7th, 2018. That year, there were 41 fewer murders, 155 less rapes, and even the suicide rate was down that year. This was a collective vision being held. And I am not discounting the power of God or the fact that there were other police programs going on at the same time as well. But what may have happened if the same amount of people came together regularly to breathe a little slower and share in a common thought of something greater than themselves for the good of the city? People working together and being unified helps everyone. During this time of separation in dealing with COVID-19, this is a very clear fact. We are predisposed to working together, and something feels off when we can't. Is the City of Columbus ready to offer this different path that shows proof with brain scans to relieve stress, as well as increase tolerance, reduce fear, negative emotions, and lower crime rates to heal this wound?
Thank you, Miss Life. We appreciate your comments this evening. Thank you for coming down. Our next speaker is Ashley Mental. Miss Mental, you have 3 minutes.
Councilmember, I do not have Ashley Mental in attendance.
That's quite all right. We will move on then to Dewan Sharp.
Dewan Sharp is not in attendance, sir.
Our next speaker on the list is Luis Gill.
I'm sorry, sir, I do not have Luis Gill in attendance.
This is making it easy on me here. Our next speaker after that is Brian Weaver.
How you doing? My name's Brian Weaver. I'm a deaf advocate. My website is makedeafgreat.com or makecolumbusgreat.com. I've been shot by the City of Columbus Police Department, and the Baker investigation number 211 deemed as acceptable. And if you go to my website, you'll see the harassment I've endured by the police department. And I've repeatedly asked City Council for the past several weeks to have a meeting with City Council members, including Shannon Harden. He promised that he would contact me, and I still have not received contact from him. Along with being a deaf advocate, I am also the police IT system administrator, and I was asked to delete records, FOP union videos, and numerous other police photos and phone call logs from the police systems. I met with Miranda Vollmer, who is the City of Columbus HR manager, and she said the same thing that Chief Ketterson Thompson said, that police don't like change, they're incapable of change, and they will not change to protect the status quo. And if you go to my website, you'll see meetings that I recorded as a system administrator with the HR director and police administration. And you'll see the recordings, including "Turn your effing bell tones up, you mother effing deaf guy," "You effing idiot, you stupid idiot, we'll have the cops called on you." And the Ohio Attorney General said that that language is acceptable. When they would not pay for my unemployment, the unemployment appealed and it awarded my unemployment. Unfortunately, the Ohio unemployment system's been hacked and scammed, so I still have not been paid by this Ohio unemployment. As a system administrator, I also noticed that there was a lot of cybersecurity within our police system. And I finally got in contact with Rob Stewart on January 25th and provided him the cybersecurity issue that exposed law enforcement data and exposed taxpayers' data within the police system. There was no investigation. The Ohio Attorney General will not investigate. And because of this, we've seen false Amber Alerts, false tornado sirens been happening. Now with the cybersecurity issues that I released on January 25th, I have some inside help that released me the shooting where I got shot by the City of Columbus on January 26th. And then as you saw, Chief got terminated on January 28th. The timeline fits. Rob Stewart has all the information, or some of the information. I still have not been contacted back by Rob Stewart on my termination and cybersecurity issues that the City of Columbus will not investigate to protect its officers. You'll see that I would recommend that the City of Columbus investigate this and also provide law enforcement free credit reporting for the next 30 for the next 365 days, ensure that their finances are safe because of the hack that happened. You can find more details at #BlueLeaksOhio.com. And not only do we need to protect our data, we also need to be accountable for data and be able to look at the audit log and have an audit log system ensure that our data is kept secured and make sure that the videos are classified correctly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weaver. We will follow up with Deputy Director Bob Stewart and make sure that he's remaining in touch. Our final speaker this evening is Caitlin Thompson. Ms. Thompson, you have 3 minutes. If you could introduce yourself and tell us your comments.
Yes. First, I would like to say thank you to Councilmember Remy and everyone on tonight's call who have made these conversations possible. My name is Caitlin Thompson, and I am a social worker completing a service year with the Victims of Crime program at Community, Refugee, and Immigration Services. With our college interns, I have been looking at language access policies of police departments across the country to determine how we could work together to put Columbus Police Department's language access on par with other cities. In the case of Columbus PD, we have been thrilled and very, very grateful at the allocation of funds to make cell phones more available to officers for interpretation. That being said, there is still a troubling underuse of qualified interpretation being employed in cases involving individuals with limited English proficiency. One of the most troubling cases we often see is the use of children as interpreters for their parents when filing a police report. Not only are children not qualified to be interpreters, but in placing them in the middle of sometimes traumatic situations, we are failing to protect our community's youth. Recently, a family approached our program for assistance in response to a violent crime committed against their family. In the police report, the family's 16-year-old daughter was asked to interpret for her mother. A common issue in these policies is the use of the term exigent circumstances when there is not a corresponding definition for what these exigent circumstances are. Working to develop a more detailed description of what these circumstances may be and the appropriate responses to them would better help our officers and our community members to interact in the most efficient manner. In any interaction between Columbus PD and individuals with limited English proficiency, a qualified interpreter should be used to ensure that information is being conveyed and understood accurately for all individuals involved. We understand that there are truly exigent circumstances in which a bystander must be used for interpretation, but there are also times when this is never appropriate. It is never appropriate to use a minor child as an interpreter, nor is it ever appropriate to use a partner or spouse as an interpreter during domestic violence calls. To touch on tonight's earlier discussion of training and accountability, collaboration between Columbus PD and community resources to develop clear interpretation procedures would serve both our officers and community immensely. We have the responsibility of taking care of each member of our community, and here in Columbus, our community thrives because of the rich diversity brought by immigrants and refugees. Thank you so much to everyone present tonight for your time and your service to our community.
Thank you once again, Ms. Thompson. It's great to hear your comments. And of course, this is a big priority of mine as we work towards making sure that there's language access for all. So thank you for continuing to bring that forth. That brings us to the end of tonight's town hall on reimagining public safety. I certainly want to thank our guest speakers for being here tonight. Detective Collier from Cleveland, Charmin Leone, Chief Mike Butler, Assistant Chief Tom Thompson. Special thanks to Amos Irwin, the program director with the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, who's instrumental in confirming some of our panelists this evening. The Saunders Company for helping to set up and run this and our previous events. Director Amy DeLong, Director of Civil Service, for being on standby and all of the work that she does in her area. Angela Burks, Mark Carter, Lee Cole, David Miller, and our CTV team for assisting with our technology needs and making sure we get this information to the Columbus community. My council colleagues, Councilmember Rob Dorans, who had baby duty, and Council President Harden, who I know would like to say a few extra words. So I'll turn the mic over to him for one more moment.
I'm sorry about that. I was trying to get my lighting together too. But what I realized was that this was the sixth, the last of our series of community conversations around reimagining public safety. So I want to thank everyone who has participated, the thousands and thousands of folks who have taken our online survey, the hundreds and hundreds of online responses that we did through the Saunders Company. This is what Reimagining Public Safety is about, is hearing from you and then working with us as council members to turn these suggestions, these ideas, some of the things that we heard from amazing experts from all around the country into real policy in the budget that council will pass in the next several weeks. And so I just want to, again, say thank you to everyone who has participated. Thank you to my colleagues who have led these sessions, and certainly thank you to the Saunders Company for their support, and all the experts from around the country for the work they do in their own communities and on behalf of communities all across the country, and making sure that when we think of safety for everyone. And so just want to, again, encourage folks. I think Gail or Councilmember Remy, we still have a couple more days for the survey, or is the survey done?
Yes, President Harden, we do. We have through the end of the week for the survey. Yes, sir.
All right, so we're still encouraging folks to go take the survey. It will be then our job as council members to show the correlation between what you said to us and what is in this upcoming operating budget that we hope to pass by the end of this month. So again, thank you, Councilmember Remy, for leading this substantive conversation this evening.
Thank you, Council President Harden. I'd be remiss not to thank my team, Jeffrey Carter, Lucy Frank, as well as John Oswald with the Council Legislative Research Office. And most importantly, I'd like to thank all of the residents who tuned in this evening, who's participated in these 6 hearings, who has been vocal in bringing forth their opinions on what will reimagining safety mean to the city of Columbus, and as well as all those who participated in this evening's discussion. This concludes tonight's town hall. I want to thank everyone once again. Be safe, stay warm, and we look forward to a new day tomorrow.